Well, joining us now to discuss this further are Baroness Sarah Ludford, the Liberal Democrats' Brexit spokeswoman in the House of Lords, and Hugh Bennett, the deputy editor of the Leave-supporting website BrexitCentral. So, just heard there from Adam Bolton and saw that dramatic moment when we all realised that the people had voted out. Take us back a year. What was your first thoughts when you realised how the referendum had gone?
Yeah, well, I think it's easy to forget only a year on the scale of the achievement that the Leave campaign actually winning. All the pundits had written them off, the bookies had written them off. You had the entire ranks of the mass ranks of the establishment, the Treasury, the government, millions of pounds of taxpayer cash, Mark Carney, the Bank of England, Barack Obama, telling everyone that it'd be a catastrophe if we voted to leave. On the other hand, you had this small band of dedicated campaigners, thousands of volunteers going out every weekend and almost every day to fight for it, with a positive vision of a self-governing Britain outside the European Union that's broadening its horizons to the entire world rather than looking inwards at a protectionist bloc in Europe. And incredibly, I think the British people decided to vote for for that optimistic, outward-looking vision. And I think it was an incredible feeling when it happened.
Baroness Sarah Ludford, I've got a sense you might have a slightly different view on how the two campaigns were.
Well, I wouldn't give the Remain campaign, 10 out of 10 for the way it was run. I would have run it slightly differently myself. But I think people had lots of motives in the way they voted, certainly on the Leave side. I don't believe that a lot of them did have that positive, optimistic feeling that, Britain on the high seas was what they were voting for. I think a lot of people were possibly voting in a rather defensive way. And I think the psychology of the referendum was you were asking people to, in voting Remain, you were saying, are you very content with what's going on in your life? Do you want the status quo? Or do you want this rather seductive break free of everything sort of rotten in your life? So that was, I think, interesting psychology. And, of course, there are a lot of reasons for people to be aggrieved and angry and discontent. A lot of them have got absolutely nothing to do with the EU, and the Leave campaign exploited a lot of that feeling of discontent. But I think we're showing, a year on, just what a challenge we've got domestically, none of which will be solved by Brexit. In fact, will be made worse by Brexit.
Well, let's talk a bit now, shall we, about the challenges a year on. We've got your take on the campaign, Hugh Bennett, but has things really been going exactly how you had anticipated that they would?
Well, Brexit's obviously, it's a process, it's not a single event. There's been all sorts of challenges. Clearly, there's a lot of people who still don't want Brexit to happen. There's been challenges through the courts. There's been challenges, in the House of Lords with Baroness Ludford and some of her colleagues. And I think there's a lot of people that would still rather rub the referendum result out of the history books.
Does that include you then, Baroness? Or?
Well, I mean, the government wasted 6 months challenging parliamentary accountability. That's what supposedly people like me supported, and all credit to Gina Miller. And Adam Bolton, in his remarks, made me think Theresa May had a choice. She could have handled this in a very business-like way, a way that would have brought people together, but she chose the most divisive and prospectively chaotic version of extreme Brexit. The idea that a Prime Minister would threaten no deal is incredibly irresponsible. And now we have the chance to move in that more sensible and perhaps less divisive direction to negotiate a kind of Brexit deal that would leave us in the single market and the customs union, and then, of course, as the Liberal Democrats advocate, give people a chance to actually compare side by side whether the Brexit deal is as promised compared to what we have remaining in the EU. And I would like to ask the Brexit supporters, why do they refuse to give the people the final say on the deal?
I want to pick up on a couple of things you said there. Extreme Brexit. Do you think Theresa May's vision is extreme Brexit?
I don't think Theresa May's vision is extreme at all. I think, and what you see now, actually, is that the UK's idea of how to implement Brexit is very much the same as the EU's idea of how to implement Brexit. It's a Canada Plus deal. It's the idea that there's going to be a comprehensive free trade agreement. The UK has said, the EU said there's no cherry picking of the single market. We've said, right, that's fine. We don't want freedom of movement to continue. We don't want to have to accept the EU acquis. We don't have to accept the European Court of Justice. We're not going to try and mess with your treaties, mess with your systems. What we're going to do is get the closest possible relationship outside the single market and outside the customs union, because that delivers on what people voted for. It delivers on control of laws, control of borders, control of our trade policy. And that's clearly the approach that the EU is taking to negotiations as well. I don't think it's extreme at all.
As Philip Hammond, who is now finding his voice, has said, people did not vote to become poorer. And so why would the Brexit side refuse to endorse the idea that people should get an opportunity to have a democratic say on whether they actually like the colour of the Brexit money? Last year, they were not given one single proposition by the Leave campaign. On the Remain side, it was obvious, you know, you stayed in the EU. But there were a myriad voices on the Leave side. So why do you object to giving people an opportunity in another referendum? Why did
all the leaders of both sides said very clearly?
I can quote you, Nigel Farage and Dan Hannan, who said we stay in the single market. So why not have another referendum?
You have the leader of... No, but I think it clearly shows it's the same contempt for democracy which the EU has consistently shown over the years. You know, they're quite happy to use democracy as a nice sort of fig leaf to give things legitimacy when it goes their way. We only have to look at what happened to Ireland with the Lisbon Treaty. You know, they voted the wrong way. They were forced to vote again. You look at France. You look at the Netherlands. They rejected the European Constitution, only to have it rammed through anyway as the Lisbon Treaty.
We're not talking about a rerun. We're talking about an opportunity for voters to have the final say once they actually...
The thing is, you don't want a Brexit at all. You voted against the third reading of the bill. You don't want Brexit at all.
I'm going to have to break this up.
My views are irrelevant in this. It's what the voters should be able to decide.
You don't think Brexit should
side is being very arrogant in denying people the final say.
Alan Bolton there was saying that he thinks that the debate around Brexit has become less confrontational. I'm guessing that the two of you would perhaps disagree with that slightly. Thank you.
Well, I hope in the House of Parliament it would become more sensible.
Well, sensible, confrontational, perhaps we'll have a bit of both coming up. My feeling is that we may do. Feelings certainly still running high a year on after the referendum. Thank you both for a very fiery exchange.